Welcome to Inkleaf, a quiet corner where we don't rush healing and we don't pretend everything is fine. Today's story is about something we rarely learn yet desperately need: how to sit with ourselves when no one else knows what to say. Most of us were never taught how to deal with emotions. We were taught how to hide them, to stay strong, to stay busy, to move on. So when sadness shows up, we distract ourselves. When anxiety appears, we judge it. When pain lingers, we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel this way. And slowly, we become strangers to our own inner world. The art of self-therapy begins with a simple idea. Healing doesn't start by fixing yourself. It starts by listening. Listening without interrupting. Listening without trying to solve. Listening without shame. Imagine treating your emotions the way you would treat a close friend. You wouldn't rush them. You wouldn't say, "Get over it." You would sit. You would stay. You would let them speak. But with ourselves, we rarely do that. The book reminds us that emotions are not problems. They are messages, signals pointing to unmet needs, old wounds, or truths we've been avoiding. Anxiety often comes from uncertainty we haven't faced. Anger from boundaries we never learned to set. Pain from losses we never allowed ourselves to grieve. None of this means something is wrong with you. It means something inside you wants attention. Self-therapy is not about becoming your own doctor. It's about becoming your own safe place, a space where emotions are allowed to exist without fear. The moment you stop fighting what you feel, something softens. Not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly. And that quiet is powerful. This first step is awareness, sitting with yourself long enough to hear what's really going on beneath the noise, not to judge it, not to label it, just to notice. Because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. In the next part, we'll explore how to talk to yourself with compassion and how your inner voice can either deepen wounds or slowly help them close.
Once you begin listening to your emotions, something else becomes impossible to ignore. The way you talk to yourself. That inner voice, it's always there, commenting, judging, comparing. "Oh, you should be stronger. Why are you still like this? Others have it worse." Most of us would never speak to a friend this way, yet we speak to ourselves like this every day. The book reminds us that healing doesn't happen in an environment of criticism. It happens in safety. Your inner voice shapes your inner world. When it's harsh, the body stays tense. When it's kind, the nervous system slowly relaxes. Self-therapy begins by noticing the tone, not just the words. When something goes wrong, do you punish yourself or do you pause? When you feel overwhelmed, do you push harder or do you ask what you need? Kindness is not weakness, it is regulation. The book suggests something simple but powerful. Talk to yourself as if you're talking to a younger version of you. A child who didn't know how to cope. A child who did their best with what they had. When you speak gently, defenses lower. And when defenses lower, the truth can finally surface. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. It means facing it without cruelty. Another key idea appears here: self-validation. Not waiting for others to approve your feelings. Not needing permission to feel hurt. You can say, "This makes sense." You can say, "Of course this feels heavy." You can say, "I'm allowed to feel this." Those sentences change something deep inside. Self-therapy teaches that you don't need to be fixed, you need to be understood. And the first person who must understand you is you. In the next part, we'll talk about practical tools, writing, reflection, and how turning feelings into words can slowly turn pain into clarity. Once your inner voice becomes gentler, something interesting happens. Feelings that once felt overwhelming start asking for expression, not explanation, not solutions, just expression. This is where the art of self-therapy introduces one of the most powerful tools of all, writing. Writing slows the mind down. It turns chaos into sentences. It gives shape to emotions that felt too big to hold. When you write, you're not performing, you're unloading. You don't write to sound wise, you write to be honest. The book suggests simple questions. What am I really feeling right now? What am I afraid to admit? What do I need that I'm not allowing myself to ask for? These questions don't demand answers immediately. They invite truth to rise at its own pace. Another practice is reflection without judgment, looking at patterns, not to blame yourself, but to understand yourself. Noticing what keeps repeating, what keeps hurting, what keeps asking for attention. Pain often repeats because it hasn't been heard the first time. When emotions are written down, they stop floating endlessly in the mind. They become something you can sit beside instead of something chasing you. And slowly, clarity appears. Not solutions, not perfection, just clarity. Self-therapy is not about digging forever into pain. It's about making space for it so it no longer controls you from the shadows. Some days, writing will feel light. Some days, it will feel heavy. Both are okay. Healing is not linear. It doesn't move in straight lines. It circles back. It pauses. It deepens. But every time you choose to express instead of suppress, you create a little more room inside yourself. In the final part, we'll talk about becoming your own safe space and how self-therapy becomes a way of living, not just a tool. When you've learned to listen, to speak kindly to yourself, and to express what's inside, something slowly changes. You stop running away from yourself. You begin to feel safer. Not because life stopped being difficult, but because you stopped being hostile toward your own pain. This is the heart of self-therapy, becoming your own safe space. A place inside where emotions are allowed to arrive without fear, where sadness doesn't need justification, where anxiety isn't rushed away, where you don't abandon yourself the moment things get uncomfortable. This doesn't mean you'll never struggle again. It means you won't struggle alone. The book reminds us that healing is not about constant happiness. It's about honesty, patience, and trust. Trust that emotions rise for a reason. Trust that you can sit with them without breaking. Over time, self-therapy becomes less about techniques and more about a way of living. You pause more, you react less, you listen deeper, to yourself and to others. You start choosing rest without guilt, boundaries without apology, compassion without conditions. And quietly, resilience grows. Not the hard, armored kind, but the soft strength that bends without breaking. You realize something important. You don't need to be fixed to be worthy of care. You don't need to be healed to deserve kindness. You are allowed to be a work in progress and still be gentle with yourself. That's the art of self-therapy. Not mastering pain, but meeting it with presence. If this story made you feel a little less alone, take a moment to support this space. Like this video and subscribe to Inkleaf, where growth is slow, healing is human, and you are always welcome as you are. Because sometimes the most powerful therapy is simply learning to stay with yourself.